Amara Okoye was only 26, but she believed her life was already a dream come true. She lived in Ikoyi, Lagos, studying architecture and preparing to marry the man everyone called perfect. Tunde Balogun was 34, rich, confident and powerful. He owned half the luxury buildings in Victoria Island and soon he would be her husband. Their wedding was planned at the most expensive venue in the city. People called her lucky. Amara called it love. Her older sister, Chioma, was by her side through everything. Chioma helped her choose the wedding dress, taste the cakes and even calm her down when she got nervous. Amara trusted her completely. She trusted them both. The night before the wedding, Amara's phone buzzed. It was a message from Tunde. "Come to the penthouse. We need to talk." Her heart beat fast. Maybe he missed her. Maybe he wanted to surprise her. She arrived earlier than expected. The penthouse door was slightly open. She smiled softly and pushed it just a little. Then she heard laughter. Not just any laughter. Chioma's laughter. Amara froze. She looked inside, and her entire world collapsed. Tunde and Chioma were kissing. Not pulling away. Not ashamed. Comfortable. Like they belonged together. Amara couldn't breathe. Then Chioma spoke, her voice cold and sharp. "She was always too naive for you." Amara felt something inside her break. Not loudly. Not dramatically. Silently. Her hands trembled but she didn't make a sound. She stepped back. One step. Then another. They never saw her. They never knew she was there. That night Amara didn't cry. She didn't scream. She didn't confront them. She just walked away. And with every step she left behind her wedding, her family, her love, and the life she thought was hers. Amara didn't sleep that night. She sat on the floor of her small apartment, still wearing the same dress, staring at nothing. Her mind kept replaying the same moment. Tunde's hands on Chioma. Chioma's voice. Those words. Too naive. When her phone started ringing the next morning, her heart jumped. For a second she thought maybe Tunde was calling to explain. Maybe Chioma was calling to apologize. But it was her mother. Amara answered slowly. "Mom." Her mother's voice was cold. Like she was talking to a stranger. "Where are you?" Amara swallowed. "Home." There was a short silence. Then her mother said the words that destroyed whatever was left of her heart. "Chioma and Tunde are getting married today." Amara felt the air leave her lungs. He thought she heard wrong. "What?" "You heard me," her mother said sharply. "The guests are already arriving." Amara couldn't speak. Her mother continued, her tone full of disappointment. "Tunde said you are too weak, too emotional. He needs a strong woman. Chioma is stronger. She understands his world." Each word felt like a knife. "You should be grateful," her mother added. "Your sister is saving this family from embarrassment." Saving the family. Amara's hands started shaking. Not one person asked if she was okay. Not one person asked what happened. They had already chosen Chioma. They had already erased her. When the call ended, Amara sat there in silence. Then her phone started buzzing again. Message after message. Notifications. She opened social media. And her heart shattered all over again. Wedding photos. Tunde smiling. Chioma beside him. Wearing Amara's wedding dress. Her dress. The dress she cried happy tears in. Now Chioma was wearing it like Amara never existed. The comments were full of hearts and congratulations. Perfect couple. Made for each other. Amara realized something in that moment. She had become invisible. Like her love never mattered. Like she never mattered. By evening, Amara made a decision. He packed one suitcase. Just clothes. Nothing else. No memories. No photos. No past. Before sunrise, she left Lagos. No goodbye. No explanations. She went to the bus station alone and bought a one-way ticket to Accra, Ghana. She didn't know what waited for her there. She didn't have a plan. She didn't have family. She didn't have love. All she had was a broken heart, and the quiet hope that maybe somewhere far away, she could breathe again. Accra did not welcome Amara with open arms. It welcomed her with heat, noise, and loneliness. Her first nights were the hardest. She rented the cheapest room she could find in a crowded building near OSU. The room was small and hot with cracked walls and a thin mattress on the floor. At night, she could hear strangers laughing in other rooms, cars passing outside, music playing somewhere far away. But inside her room there was only silence and pain. Every night she cried herself to sleep. She cried for the wedding that never happened. She cried for the man she loved. She cried for the sister who betrayed her. She cried for the family who erased her like she never existed. Some mornings she woke up not knowing who she was anymore. To survive, Amara took the only job she could find: waitress. The restaurant was in OSU, a busy neighborhood full of tourists and rich locals. Every day she stood for hours, smiling at strangers, carrying heavy trays, pretending she was okay. Some customers were kind, others were not. Some ignored her completely like she was invisible. Some spoke to her like she was nothing. Once, a man snapped his fingers at her and said, "You." Faster. Not Amara. Not a person. Just you. She went to the bathroom that day and cried quietly, then washed her face and went back to work. Because she had no choice. This was not the life she dreamed of. This was rock bottom. But pain does something strange. If it doesn't destroy you, it changes you. One night after another long shift, Amara sat on her mattress and looked at her old notebook. Inside were her architecture sketches. Buildings she designed. Dreams she once believed in. She touched the pages gently. And something inside her woke up. She remembered who she was. She was not just a broken woman. She was an architect. Or at least, she was meant to be. The next week she enrolled in night classes. It wasn't easy. She worked all day. Studied all night. Slept only a few hours. She was always tired. Always exhausted. But for the first time in a long time, she had purpose. Slowly, quietly, Amara began to rebuild her life. No one in Accra knew her past. No one knew about Tund. No one knew about Chioma. To them she was just Amara. A quiet girl. A hardworking girl. A girl with big dreams. They didn't know she was rebuilding herself from ashes. And this time, she wasn't rebuilding for love. She was rebuilding for herself. 7 years can destroy a person. Or remake them. For Amara it did both. The girl who once cried herself to sleep on a thin mattress in Accra was gone. In her place stood a woman no one could ignore. Her name was no longer Amara Okoye. Now the world knew her as Amara Nwoy. She chose that name carefully. It gave her distance from the past. Distance from the pain. Distance from the people who broke her. And under that new name she built a new life. A powerful one. She eventually moved to Kigali, Rwanda. A fast-growing city full of opportunity. At first she worked for a small architecture company. She stayed quiet, observed everything and worked harder than anyone else. Her designs were different, bold, elegant, unforgettable. People started noticing. One project became 2. 2 became 5. 5 became 10. And then something unbelievable happened. She opened her own firm. Her own company. Her name was on the door. Amara Nwoy, lead architectural designer. The same girl who once carried food trays for strangers was now designing luxury commercial buildings. Glass towers. Modern offices. Beautiful spaces that touched the sky. She bought her own car. The first time she held the keys, her hands trembled. Not from weakness, from pride. She bought her own home too. A beautiful, quiet place with large windows and sunlight that filled every corner. Sometimes she stood there in silence, remembering the tiny hot room in OSU. She had come so far. She had won. But success doesn't erase scars. At night when the world became quiet, the memories still came back. Tund. Chioma. The betrayal. Fame. She never dated anyone. Never allowed anyone close. Love to her was no longer safe. Love was a risk she refused to take again. She told herself she didn't need it. She had her career. Her success. Her freedom. That was enough. Or at least, that's what she believed. Until one morning everything changed. Her assistant walked into her office holding a gold envelope. "Miss Nwoy," she said smiling. "This just arrived for you." Amar took it confused. It looked expensive. Important. She opened it slowly. And as her eyes read the words inside, her heart stopped. It was an invitation. A real estate summit. In Cape Town, South Africa. The biggest developers in Africa would be there. And at the bottom in bold letters were the words. Keynote speaker, Amara Nwoy. She stared at it in silence. She didn't know yet that this invitation was not just an opportunity. It was destiny. Because waiting for her there was the past she thought she left behind. The flight to Cape Town was quiet, but Amara's mind was loud. She sat by the window looking at the clouds, holding the gold invitation in her hands. Even now it didn't feel real. 7 years ago she had nothing. Now she was invited as a keynote speaker to one of the biggest real estate summits in Africa. People were waiting to hear her speak. People respected her. People admired her. When her plane landed in Cape Town, everything looked beautiful. The city was clean, modern, and alive. Table Mountain stood tall in the distance. like a silent witness to her arrival. A black luxury car was waiting for her outside the airport. "Welcome, Miss Ngoy," the driver said politely. Miss Ngoy. She would never get used to how powerful that sounded. The next morning she stood in front of the mirror in her hotel room. She wore a perfectly tailored white suit. Her hair was neat, her posture straight, her face calm. But inside her heart was beating fast. Not from fear, from anticipation. When she arrived at the conference hall, it took her breath away. It was massive. Glass walls, crystal lights, hundreds of people in expensive suits. This was a room full of power. And she belonged there. As she walked inside, heads turned. People smiled at her. Some nodded with respect. Some whispered her name. "That's Amara Ngoy. She's the keynote speaker. She's brilliant." She walked confidently, her heels clicking softly against the floor. She felt strong, untouchable, until suddenly, she saw him. Tund Balogun. Her body froze. He stood across the room talking to a group of men, laughing the same laugh she once loved. He looked older now. A few gray hairs. A few lines on his face. But he was still rich. Still confident. Still arrogant. He wore an expensive suit, his watch shining under the lights. For a moment, Amara couldn't breathe. 7 years. 7 years since she last saw him. 7 years since he destroyed her life. Her heart pounded in her chest. She wondered if he could feel it too. As if he knew she was there. But he didn't look at her. He didn't see her. He didn't recognize her. To him she was just another successful woman in the room. Just another stranger. Amara stared at him quietly. This was the man who once thought she was weak. The man who replaced her like she was nothing. The man who never imagined she would rise. No. She was standing in the same room as him. Not as his victim. But as his equal. Oh, more than his equal. She looked away slowly, her face calm, her eyes strong. He didn't recognize her. Not yet. He would. Amara tried to focus on her breathing. Seeing Tund again was already hard enough. But then, he saw her. Chioma. Her sister. The same sister who stole her life. Chioma stood near the far corner of the hall, beside Tund. At first, Amara almost didn't recognize her. 7 years had changed her. Chioma was still beautiful, but something was different. Something was missing. Her confidence. Her glow. Her happiness. Her smile looked forced, like she was wearing it for other people. Her eyes looked tired. The kind of tired that sleep cannot fix. She stood beside Tund, but not close to him. Not like a woman in love. More like a woman who didn't belong anywhere else. Amara watched quietly from a distance. Chioma kept adjusting her dress nervously. She looked around often, like she was uncomfortable. Like she didn't feel safe. This was not the same Chioma who once laughed while destroying her sister's heart. This was someone else. 2 women walked past Amara, whispering softly. "Is that Tund Balogun's wife?" "Yes. I heard he cheated on her many times." "Of course he did. Men like him never change." They laughed quietly and walked away. Amara felt a strange feeling in her chest. Not happiness. Not exactly. But something close to justice. She looked back at Chioma. For the first time in her life, Chioma didn't look powerful. She looked trapped, like she was living inside a beautiful prison. Chioma glanced at Tund, but he wasn't looking at her. He was busy talking to other people, smiling, shaking hands, enjoying attention. Ignoring his own wife. Amara remembered that feeling. Standing beside him, but feeling completely alone. Chioma's eyes moved across the room, and for 1 second, they stopped on Amara. Amara's heart skipped. Did she recognize her? Chioma frowned slightly, confused, but then she looked away. He didn't know. She didn't see her sister. She saw only a stranger. Amara realized something in that moment. The power had shifted. 7 years ago, Chioma took everything from her. Her fiancé, her wedding, her family, her life. But today, Amara had something Chioma didn't. Peace, freedom, success, and dignity. She didn't need revenge. Life had already begun doing the work for her. Amara stood tall, calm and silent. She didn't approach them. She didn't speak. He just watched. But sometimes, the most powerful revenge is not hurting them back. It's letting them see what they lost. When they called her name, the entire hall became quiet. "Please welcome our keynote speaker, Amara Ngoy." Amara stood up slowly. This was her moment. She walked toward the stage, her steps calm and steady, but her heart beating hard inside her chest. Hundreds of powerful people were watching her. Billionaires, investors, developers, people who built cities. 7 years ago she had nothing. Today they were waiting to hear her. She reached the podium and looked at the audience. And for a brief second, her eyes found Tund. He was watching her, curious, interested, but still unaware. She took a deep breath and began. She spoke about architecture, about vision, about rising cities in Africa. She spoke about resilience, about rebuilding, about creating beauty from nothing. Her voice was strong, confident, unbreakable. Every word came from her soul. The room was silent. People listened carefully. Some nodded. Some looked inspired. When she finished, there was silence for 1 second. Then the entire hall exploded into applause. Loud, powerful. People stood up, clapping for her, respecting her, honoring her. Amara smiled softly. She had done it. She had won. When she stepped down from the stage, many people came to greet her. They shook her hand. They praised her. You were amazing. Incredible presentation. You're truly inspiring. Then suddenly, she heard a familiar voice behind her. Excuse me. Her body froze. She turned slowly. Tun was standing there, up close, face to face. For a moment he just smiled politely. The same charming smile he used on everyone. That was a brilliant presentation, Miss Moy, he said. Miss Moy. Not Amara. Not yet. He looked into her eyes. And something changed. His smile faded. His eyes narrowed slightly. Confusion. Recognition. But his face slowly lost color. Amara. Her name left his lips like a ghost. He stared at her like he was seeing the impossible. Like he was seeing someone who was supposed to be gone forever. His mouth opened slightly but no words came out. At that exact moment Chioma walked toward them. She saw Tun's face first. Then she looked at Amara. And froze. Her eyes widened. Her body went still. No, she whispered. They both stared at her like they had seen a miracle. Or a ghost. The weak girl they betrayed was gone. In her place stood a powerful woman. Successful. Respected. Untouchable. They never expected her to rise. They never expected her to survive. And they never expected her to win. Tun stood there staring at her like his world had just cracked. Amara, he said again, his voice lower now. Not confident. Not proud. Just unsure. Amara looked at him calmly. Her face showed no anger. No pain. Nothing. Just peace. Can we talk? He asked quietly. She didn't answer immediately. But after a moment she nodded once. They walked to a private corner of the hall, away from the crowd. Away from the noise. For the first time in 7 years they were alone. Tund ran his hand nervously over his face. I don't even know where to start, he said. Amara said nothing. He swallowed. I thought you disappeared, he continued. I tried to find you at first. Then life just... He stopped. His excuses sounded weak even to himself. I made a mistake, he said finally. The biggest mistake of my life. Amara's expression didn't change. He looked at her, his eyes full of regret. You didn't deserve that. What I did to you, what Chioma and I did, it was wrong. Before Amara could respond, another voice spoke. I'm sorry too, Chioma. Amara turned her head slowly. Chioma stood there, her eyes already full of tears. I was jealous of you, Chioma said, her voice shaking. You were always kind, always loved, and when Tun chose you, I hated you for it. A tear rolled down her cheek. I thought marrying him would make me happy, she whispered. But it didn't. It only destroyed everything. Amara listened quietly. 7 years ago she had dreamed of this moment. She had imagined screaming, crying, asking why. But now, she felt nothing. No anger. No hate. Just distance. She looked at both of them. The two people who once broke her. And he realized they had no power over her anymore. He took a small step back. Tun's voice cracked. Amara, please say something. She looked directly into his eyes. And spoke calmly. You didn't destroy me. They both stared at her, confused. She continued. You created me. Silence. You created the woman I am today, she said. Your betrayal forced me to become stronger. Your cruelty forced me to build my own life. Her voice was steady. Taken. I am not standing here because of your love, she said. I am standing here because of your betrayal. Tun's eyes filled with tears. Chioma began crying softly. But Amara didn't comfort them. That was no longer her role. She gave them one last look. Not with pain. Not with love. But with closure. Then she turned around. And walked away. Not the broken girl they once knew. but a powerful woman they would never have again. The next morning, the conference hall was more crowded than ever. Everyone was talking about one thing: the billion-dollar project. It was the biggest commercial development planned in Africa. Whoever won it would become one of the most powerful developers on the continent. Amara sat quietly in her seat, calm as always. Across the room, Tun sat with Chioma. He looked serious, focused. This was the kind of deal he lived for. This was his world. Or at least it used to be. The host walked onto the stage, smiling proudly. "Ladies and gentlemen," he said into the microphone, "today, we are proud to announce the lead developer for the Cape Town Horizon project." The room became silent. You could feel the tension in the air. Tund leaned forward slightly, confident. He believed it was his. He had the money, the reputation, the power. He was sure he had already won. The host opened the gold envelope. He smiled. Then he spoke. "The lead developer is Amara Nwoy." For 1 second. No one moved. No one breathed. Then the entire hall exploded into applause. People stood up, clapping, cheering. All eyes turned to Amara. She stood slowly, gracefully, powerfully. Tun's face went pale. The confidence disappeared from his eyes. Shock replaced it. "No," he whispered under his breath. Chioma stared at Amara like she was watching something unreal. Amara walked to the stage. Every step was calm. Every step was victory. She shook hands with the host as cameras flashed everywhere. In that moment it became official. She had won. Not just the project. Everything. This was the same contract Tund had been chasing for months. The same deal his company desperately needed. But as the truth was, his empire was no longer as strong as before. Bad investments. Financial losses. Rumors of decline. He needed this project to save his name. But he didn't get it. She did. More. The woman he once called weak. She didn't look at him. She didn't smile at him. He didn't need to. Her success said everything. This was not revenge. She didn't take anything from him. She didn't destroy him. She simply built herself higher. And in doing that, she became everything he lost. Everything he could never have again. And as the applause filled the room, everyone knew the truth. Her empire was rising. His was falling. The city lights of Cape Town stretched out before her like a sea of stars. Amara stood alone on the balcony of her new office, the wind brushing softly against her face. Below, the streets moved with life, unaware of the story that had unfolded above. She took a deep breath, letting it fill her lungs. For the first time in 7 years she felt completely free. Free from betrayal, free from heartbreak, free from the chains of the past that had once held her down. Her eyes traced the skyline, the towers, the lights reflecting on Table Mountain. Every building she saw reminded her of the life she had rebuilt, the life she had worked for, the life she had earned with her own hands. She whispered softly to herself, almost like telling the wind, almost like telling the universe. 7 years ago you stole my future. Today I built my own. She smiled, not with arrogance but with peace. The girl who once cried herself to sleep in a tiny room in Accra no longer existed. That broken girl was gone. Amara turned away from the view and walked back into her office. Her heels clicked on the floor, steady, strong, and unshakable. Every step forward felt lighter than the last. She was no longer a victim. No one could touch her now. Not with words, not with betrayal, not with lies. Tonight, she wasn't just a successful architect, a keynote speaker, or a business leader. She was a legend. A woman who had risen from nothing, who had turned pain into power, heartbreak into opportunity. She paused at the doorway, one last look at the city she now ruled in her own way, and whispered again, more confidently this time, "This is my life, my rules, my victory." And with that she walked forward, into her future, into her freedom, into her legend.